Hello, Joe Pitkin here. I've created this brief tutorial to explain how curriculum mapping works and why we do it. The concept behind curriculum mapping is pretty simple, but sometimes folks can sit down to make a curriculum map and get a little bogged down in the details. This tutorial is designed to help you feel more comfortable with the details. So before we dive into those details, I should probably say a word about what a curriculum map is and why you're being asked to draw one up. Very simply, a curriculum map is a way of showing how your courses and assignments are connected to your program's outcomes. Now, you may be thinking, it's obvious to anyone with half a brain how my courses are connected to my outcomes. Well, maybe, but years of working with Clark faculty on outcomes assessment projects suggests to me that these connections are not always so obvious, even to people with entirely fully functional brains. For example, I would argue that if we had truly robust curriculum maps for every degree and certificate, Clark wouldn't suffer nearly so much from the silo problem within instruction. You're no doubt aware of the silo problem between instruction and student affairs, or between instruction and administration. But instruction just by itself has a lot of silo problems between instructional departments and sometimes even within those departments. Here are three. First off, as you know, many, if not most of our students come in needing to take some prerequisite courses before they can take courses within our certificate and degree programs. How often do we frustrate students? Or worse, how often do we lose students? Because they end up in courses they are unprepared for, or because they didn't get what they needed in their prerequisite courses, or because they somehow were able to avoid taking the prerequisite that they needed to take. How often do students complain to you that they had to take prerequisite courses X, Y, and Z, but that the material in those classes had nothing to do with what you're asking them to do in your class right now? A second kind of silo problem exists for the professional and technical programs. For those of you teaching in Prof Tech, you already know how little communication there is between most faculty teaching your core courses and the faculty teaching the three related areas of instruction. This doesn't affect every professional program, but we know it happens a lot in many programs that a student will succeed at every core course, but then will drop out of Clark before finishing the math or writing or human relations course. Not coincidentally, the most consistent feedback we get from local employers is that Clark students have great welding or machining or phlebotomy or whatever skills, but that they are lacking communication and human relations skills. A similar third kind of silo problem affects the AADTA. Students are required to complete a certain number of credits within several distribution areas in order to get the degree. This is our way of honoring the old ideal of the liberal arts education, and that's all to the good. However, we now have ample assessment evidence, years worth of evidence in fact, to suggest that students have a very hard time connecting the information they learn in one class with the information they learn in other classes. I would argue that a big part of the problem is related to poor transfer of skills between classes. As an English instructor, for example, I can tell you that the English faculty spend a lot of time helping students to write certain kinds of papers. However, those students are unlikely to see those kinds of essay assignments in their other classes at Clark. In other words, when faculty in the distribution areas assign writing, and I would argue that writing is assigned too rarely, the assignments are very different from what students have been trained to write in English 101 and 102. So, curriculum mapping, if done well, can help us to work past the silo problem in instruction. But another good reason to do curriculum mapping is that, as you know, we are in the midst of our mystical journey into guided pathways. Having a fully detailed curriculum map for the program you teach in will be an extremely helpful tool in putting these guided pathways together. So, to recap, curriculum maps link courses to outcomes. They link assignments to the assessments of those outcomes. And they link academic departments to one another. So now that you know a bit about the what and the why, let's talk about how to put together a solid curriculum map. And I should interject here that the Office of Instruction is developing a tool that will hopefully make these maps a lot more visually appealing and useful to students. However, for now, we have a spreadsheet that will hopefully make the data entry easy and straightforward. Later, folks in the Office of Instruction can transfer the maps you make into a more visually appealing format. So here, I've made up an imaginary program at Clark. Let's imagine that, like Hogwarts, Clark College has an alchemy program. So this alchemy technician certificate, which, let's be fair, it would be super popular at Clark, it has a certain number of classes listed across the top. Note that many of these are core courses, and those are designated with the ALCH for alchemy, but that there also needs to be listed the 3 related areas of instruction. Along the first column of this sheet, you can see 8 outcomes for this program, 5 core alchemy outcomes, plus at the bottom 3 related areas of instruction: communications, computational skills, and human relations. You also see a second column here, which may seem a little busy, but if we look at each outcome on the left, you'll see that there are 3 rows. One which says level of proficiency, one which says assessment method, and one which says threshold for success. So what you're being asked to do for each course in your program is to identify first which outcome or outcomes that course helps a student to meet. Once you've done that, provide 3 pieces of information about that course. First, at what level should a student meet the outcome in question? Second, what assignment or test or project must the student produce to show that she has met the outcome? And finally, how well must a student do on this test or project to show that she has met the outcome? So let's zoom in a little so that you can see what I'm talking about in action. So this is just one segment of the spreadsheet on the last slide, zoomed in so that we can focus. You have one of the outcomes that students will need to meet in order to get this certificate. In this case, perform alchemical processes to accurately and safely prepare and dispense potions in a variety of magical settings. Great. So let's say that this outcome is met by taking 3 classes: Alchemy 105, Alchemy 110, and Alchemy 112. First off, we should make plain what our assumptions are behind this program design. If we're telling students that they must take 3 courses in order to meet a certain outcome, then we are expecting that the student will meet the outcome more effectively after finishing the 3rd class than after the 1st class. Otherwise, why would we tell students that they need to take 3 classes on the subject? Why not just 1? So to clarify this logic for students and for one another, let's identify at what level of proficiency we're expecting students to meet this outcome in each class. If, for example, you know that a class gives students just a first taste of the outcome in question, we would say that a student finishes the class successfully by meeting the outcome at an introductory level. Let's designate this with an I. So Alchemy 105, we're saying that students are really just getting the first taste of this outcome, and so we're expecting them to meet that outcome at an introductory level. In the next course, Alchemy 110, let's say that a student has to meet the outcome in a slightly more impressive way in order to finish the course successfully. We can indicate this by saying that the outcome is reinforced for that class, and let's designate that with an R. Finally, if Alchemy 112 is the last class that a student takes at Clark, which aligns with this outcome, then we are saying that students should show their greatest mastery of this outcome in order to succeed at that class. Let's designate this mastery level with an M. And let me just say as an aside that a lot of folks are leery about using the term mastery with community college students under the logic that most skills are not mastered at the community college level. I mean, I certainly feel that way about our written communication outcome. I don't think I've mastered the written communication outcome, and I'm an English teacher. We may want to use a different term than mastery here. We've inherited that term from Canvas. Or we may want to provide guidance for students and for each other about what we mean when we say mastery. For example, for the outcomes for the AA degree, I would define mastery this way, I'm quoting here. At the end of this course, you would feel comfortable sending students on to junior level standing at a university. Students who plan to major in your field are sufficiently prepared to take upper division courses in that field. Students who plan to major in something else can demonstrate enough baseline knowledge of your field that you would consider them college educated as regards the outcome in question. So that's just a definition of mastery for the AADTA. However we go forward, whether we want to choose a different term than mastery or define mastery, we do want to have a special designation for the last time that a student is going to meet the outcome. You'll notice that there are 2 more boxes to be filled in under each class. And in the long run, I think it's a good idea for us to fill all of those boxes. However, inasmuch as this is most people's first use of curriculum mapping, let's stay focused on the boxes underneath the M's. That is to say, any class where you identify a student needing to meet an outcome at the highest level, it's key that we establish what the student will do in the class to show that he's met the outcome. For example, is he taking a test? Is he writing a paper? Is he completing a project? Let's put that information in the box marked assessment method. So in this hypothetical alchemy class, I might have students do a big end of terms potion project. And let's designate this as the way we will assess students' mastery of the outcome. Finally, in the box beneath that, identify the threshold that the student will have to meet in order to show mastery. Do you have a rubric for this assignment? If so, what score would a student have to get on the rubric in order to consider him as meeting the outcome? Are there specific test questions aligned with this outcome on your final? Which questions must the student answer correctly for you to consider her as meeting the outcome? So in this case, let's say we've got a rubric, and a student that scores 3 out of 5 on that rubric is determined to have met the alchemy, this particular outcome for the alchemy program. Keep in mind that you don't have to get your curriculum map exactly right the first time. There may be a good deal of revision between the first draft that you're doing this year and whatever final draft you come up with perhaps a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. However, even as you work on your first draft, here are a few things to keep in mind about your map. First off, every outcome should be aligned with at least one class. So if you have an outcome for your degree or certificate, there has to be at least one class that is specifically aligned with that outcome. Students are going to show that they meet the outcome by taking at least one class. Similarly, every class that's listed as a required class should be aligned with at least one program outcome. So to put it another way, when you're looking at your map, every box in your map should have something in it, or every box under your classes should have some kind of alignment with an outcome. Start with the outcome that you want students meeting at the end. That is to say, think about, how well do you want students to meet these outcomes when they finish their degree or their certificate? That's the mastery level. Start there and then work your way backwards. If students are going to be, by the end of their degree, they're going to be meeting an outcome at a certain level, after you've identified that, then think about, okay, well, what would they have to know in the prior class in order to prepare them for that? How well should they meet the outcome in that prior class? And then think, okay, so how well do they need to meet their outcome the first time that they're exposed to it? Work your way backwards that way. Finally, and really importantly for you professional technical faculty, you're going to need to talk with the faculty that teach the 3 related areas of instruction. It won't be enough in this map just to put a couple of communication studies courses up there and say, students are going to meet that human relations outcome somehow. Let the comm studies faculty worry about that. No, it's important to actually talk with the communication studies faculty about what your outcomes are related to human relations, and get from them information about what is it that's in their classes that prepares those students to meet that outcome. I know that's extra work, but this is one of the key gaps that we have around building guided pathways on the professional technical side, is finding out how to really integrate those 3 related areas of instruction. So as with all outcome related issues, I'm here to help you if you get stuck, or if you're not sure how to start, or if you want some feedback on your first map. I hope you'll find that putting together a solid curriculum map will make your assessment projects clearer, and they'll make the process of moving to guided pathways a lot more harmonious. Good luck, and be in touch. Take care.